Hello and welcome to this tutorial on miking up guitar amps. Now, guitar amps are a very wide-ranging subject, let's say. You can change the tone massively by changing, first of all, the tone on the amp, secondly, the guitar, thirdly, where the amp is in the room. So those are all options now, and usually try and maximize those before you come anywhere near placing a mic near the amplifier. Okay, obviously it's easier to capture a good guitar sound if first of all you've got a good sound in the room. We're going to look at several options. We're going to look at using one mic, we're going to look at using two mics in tandem, and then we're going to look at some more exotic options like front and back of the amp, and also adding some room ambience or room reverb to the sound. So let's get started. First of all, we're going to look at the difference between the three different designs of microphone: dynamic, ribbon, and condenser. Okay, so first we're going to look at one dynamic mic, and we've chosen the old friend, the Shure SM57. It's not for no reason that it's the sort of go-to mic for guitar amps. And if you're in a big session and you've got lots of stuff going on and lots of inputs in your desk, you might be limited to one mic. So I'm just going to show you the difference, and you can hear the difference that different positions of the mic in relation to the speaker cone, and also different distances from the amp are going to make. So we're going to stay with a standard sort of mid-crunchy sound, Fender Stratocaster. And these techniques can be useful if you, for example, have a band with two guitar players and they both play Les Pauls, for example, and one plays rhythm and one plays lead, and you need some way to differentiate the sound. Again, rather than reaching for EQ or anything like that, simple mic position can give you a fundamental different tone at the recording stage, which is always better. Okay, so we're going to start off with just putting, first of all, the 57 right at the center, facing right at the center of the speaker cone at about, maybe, what's that, 3-4 inches away, which would be a kind of a standard starting point for most guitar players. Now you might notice that the mic seems to be slightly off center from the amp, and that's because these Fender amps have actually got the speaker more towards the left hand side of the enclosure. So you need to really get a sort of a torch and just find out where the speaker cone is and move your mic until it's directly opposite, and then you can sort of mess with it then once you know where things are. Okay, so first example is going to be dead center of the speaker cone at 3-4 inches. And now we're going to move the microphone across, same distance away, but now it's going to face right at the edge of the speaker cone. Let's try that one. One at this distance is going to be an angle of 45 degrees to the center of the speaker cone. Again, it's pointing right at the center of the cone, but it's now angled. And let's have a listen to how that one affects the tone. Next one is we're going to start, we've heard it at the center of the speaker cone, which was our first recording, and now we're going to move it back maybe about a a foot or so, something like that, foot 18 inches away, and let's hear what difference that makes to the sound. And the very last one for this single mic is to move it right in as close as we can get to the grill. And again, this is quite a popular placement as well, again mostly for when there's a lot going on in the room. Obviously you want the mic as close to the sound source as possible to minimize spill. Okay, so let's take that one right up to the grill this time. Okay, this time we're going to have a look at the difference that the microphone design makes to the sound. So we're going to start off the same way as we started off previously, and we're going to look for the center of the cone here and put our dynamic mic, our 57, right in the center at about 3-4 inches distance. Then we'll do the same with the ribbon, then we'll do the same with the condenser. So first off, dynamic. Okay, next up is the ribbon. Let's have a listen to that. And lastly, we've got our condenser mic. So again, I'm just going to put it to approximately the same point. Let's have a listen to that one. Now, obviously, it goes without saying that you should record all at the same level and at the same position to make an accurate comparison. Okay, so that should give you some idea of the different tones available from the different microphones. And one of the things about miking a guitar amp is it's sometimes very difficult to get the full complexity, the full range of tone that it produces. And for that reason, sometimes you use more than one microphone on the amp, and that can be 2 mics in the front, or 1 front and back, or sometimes 2 in the front and 1 in the back. There's endless combinations that you can try, and also you can try some stereo techniques, which we'll look at in another tutorial. But for now, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to try 2 microphones on the front and see what range of tones we can get that way. Okay, now we're going to have a look at the difference adding an extra mic right beside the first one makes. Now we'll talk a wee bit about why I'm putting it right beside the first one when we talk about phase issues. Okay, so we've had a look at the differences and had a listen to the differences, placing the mic at the opposite the center of the cone, or what we call on axis, and also off axis at 45 degrees. So now we're going to have a listen to the same starting point as before, 3-4 inches away on axis to the speaker cone. And then we're going to add a second mic at 45 degrees, pointing basically towards the edge of the cone. Okay, so let's have a listen to the first one, and then we'll move the second one in and you can compare the two sounds. Okay, and let's move the second mic in. And I'm getting it as close to the other one as I can in space. And again, I'm just going to check that it's pointing right at the center of the cone. Okay. Okay, let's hear that one. Okay, let's have a listen now to two microphones with slightly different tonal qualities on their own, and let's listen to the combination of dynamic and a slightly darker ribbon sound together. And again, I'm going to try and get the ribbon as close as I can to the dynamic. Easier said than done. And again, I'm going to use the same angle of 45 degrees. Something like that. Let's have a listen to that. So the last one we're going to look at is the combination of the dynamic mic and a large diaphragm condenser mic. Again, same distance, and just the tonal variation between the mics should give you a different blend of tones. You can also experiment actually with swapping over as well. You know, you can put the dynamic at an angle and have the condenser directly on axis. So, you know, again, experimentation is the key here until you get the sound that you're after. So let's have a listen to these two. Okay, so we've looked at using various different designs of microphone for double miking on the front of the amp. Now, we need to talk a little bit about phase problems whenever you have two microphones on the same source at different distances. Okay, what can happen is that because the sound wave is arriving at each microphone at a slightly different time, a slightly different point in its path, whenever the two sounds are added together, some frequencies can cancel out, and that can be a major problem for your tone. Okay, so we're just going to do a quick experiment here. We've got two 57s placed initially at pretty much the same point in space. So the waveform coming from the amplifier should arrive at the same point. The sound should be exactly the same, or as near as we can get at each microphone. And when we add them together, there's no difference, there's no problem. One just amplifies the other. You know, we just get a bigger signal, if you like. And then we're going to listen to the difference that moving one microphone slightly forward and slightly back in relation to the other makes. And you should hear a shift in tone whenever we combine the two. So start off with just the two together, and then listen carefully as I move the microphone in real time. next we're going to have a look at placing the microphone at a different point on the amp. So far we've always put it on the front of the speaker, but you can also make the amp from the back. Remember that when the speaker moves, when it sends a compression out front, it's sending a rarefaction out the back. So it's actually producing sound, all around. So first of all, we're going to have a listen to the sound of just the mic on the front, which is our sort of go-to sound for this whole tutorial. Just right on the center of the cone, about 3-4 inches away. And then afterwards, we'll have a listen to the sound only from the speaker, from the microphone on the back of the speaker. And it's at about the same distance away, and again pointed right at the center of the magnet on the back of the speaker. Okay, now we're going to have a listen to the effect of putting a mic on the front and a mic on the back and listen to them in combination, much the same way as we did with two mics on the front. You could hear quite a different tone from the mic on the front and the mic on the back, so the combination should give you something quite interesting. When we think about how the speaker moves whenever it responds to the electrical signal, it pushes out air at the front, which means it's sucking in air at the back. And that naturally means that the waveform, the audio waveform moving out here, is an opposite polarity to the one coming out here. So that has implications for how we actually combine the two mics. And you've heard already the difference between the tone of a mic on the front and the tone of a mic on the back. They're quite radically different. So let's have a listen now to the two in combination where they're in exactly the same polarity, both in positive polarity on the desk. Okay, so this time we flipped the polarity on the desk, on the microphone on the back, to account for the fact that the waveforms are in opposite polarity coming out from each side of the speaker. And have a listen now to how that affects the overall tone when we combine the sound from the two microphones. So the last technique we're going to look at today is the difference between a single mic on the amp, and if you are recording the amp on its own or overdubbing and you don't have anything else in the room, you can take advantage of that and then add in some room mic. Okay, so you can, if you're in a nice space and it's got a nice acoustic, you can add some of that in. So this time we're going to have, first of all, a recording with just the single mic as our sort of starting point as usual. And then we're going to add in some of this condenser mic, which is set to an omnidirectional pattern. It's going to pick up whatever's happening, reflections off the wood floor. You can experiment with the positioning. I've just a very sort of basic starting point, about 3 feet away from the mic. And the thing about this is, if you're going to use the room mic, usually the further away, the better, up to about maybe sort of 10 feet. Once you get beyond that, you're going to start to notice a slight delay, because remember, the sound wave needs a bit of time to travel to the mic. So if it's just pure reverb, you're looking for a bit of ambience, then limit yourself to about 10 feet and you won't introduce a delay. Now, there are obviously ways of compensating for that in post-production, but in general, that's the sort of rule, okay? Now, you might be wondering again, we've got two mics on the same sound source. Are we going to encounter phase difficulties? The answer is generally no. As long as the distance between the two microphones is more than 3 times the distance between the sound source and the first mic, then you're usually good to go. So this is still about 3 inches, and this is about maybe 2-3 feet now. Okay. So let's have a listen first of all to the single mic on its own, and then we're going to add in some ambience from the condenser mic, which is picking up the rest of the reflections in the room. Okay, let's summarize what we've seen today. We've looked at several different ways of micing a guitar amp. Starting off with the most simple method, which is one microphone. And remember, you can change the angle of the microphone to the amp. You can change the distance of the microphone to the amp. You can change the design of the microphone. Secondly, you can use 2 microphones. We looked at using a combination of 2 different designs, taking care to keep them as much as possible in phase with each other. We looked at 2 different microphones, one front and one back, and again taking care to flip the polarity when necessary. And we also looked at using an ambient mic somewhere in the room to add a bit of depth and a bit of realism to the sound coming from the direct speaker. So that gives you a whole range of different flavors that you can try out for your guitar micing. And of course, as we said at the start, changing the guitar, changing the amp, changing pedals, all those type of things at source are much better than having to do stuff in pre-production. Better to build in nice contrast and different sounds whenever you're actually recording, and that'll make your productions come to life a lot more.